Hi friends! In this video, let's talk about how you can fight fatty liver, my top 10 best foods. Chances are you have fatty liver if you're eating the standard American diet or just eating processed foods. Fatty liver is a gateway to diabetes, high blood pressure, and all chronic metabolic diseases, cancers, and immunity problems. There are several ways to reverse fatty liver. And yes, it is reversible early in the disease. But if you choose the wrong pathway, you can be compromising other organs to save your liver. After all, that's what your liver is doing, accumulating fat to save the rest of the body. It all comes down to finding foods that will improve your metabolism and strengthen your immunity. Both are vital to the health of every single cell, every single organ, and every single tissue in your body. Now keep in mind that although this is a list of 10, each individual item can only be effective to a certain extent on its own. Number 10 is a drink billions of people consume daily. I even did a whole video about this drink that contains thousands of polyphenols, including a compound called chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid appears to be the protective component to reduce inflammation in the liver. If you guessed coffee, you would be correct. However, you can't drink it with dairy milk, as dairy protein called casein will significantly reduce the chlorogenic acid from being absorbed. Dark roasted coffee also has very little chlorogenic acid. Starbucks is a dark roasted coffee company. Decaffeinated coffee is still beneficial, and it seems the golden amount is about 2 cups a day. However, if you need a bunch of sugar to drink that coffee, you would be contributing to fat in your liver. Sugar has fructose, and it also will spike your insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone, a key driver to fatty liver. And did you know that both sugar and proteins can cause insulin to rise? Insulin is an essential hormone, and without it, you literally would die. Its purpose is to help you grow, especially during puberty and pregnancy. I went through puberty, and I also got gestational diabetes, which means my newborn would be at higher risk of all sorts of complications if my diabetes wasn't well controlled. That's when I took a deep dive into the metabolism of glucose and poked myself probably 20 times a day to make sure that my glucose value was always pristine. Too bad continuous glucose monitors didn't exist then. I achieved my goal and had a healthy 6.02-pound infant over 2 decades ago, but I sacrificed my immune system to do it and broke out with shingles a few weeks after birth. Now, getting shingles made me realize I picked the wrong path, because shingles is a marker of a weak immune system. And that's why people who are elderly break out commonly with shingles. Now, granted, this was during my fellowship. I was studying for my boards, my diet was off, and I wasn't supplementing properly. I didn't know how. I was seeing patients, I was commuting 3 hours a day, I was chronically sleep deprived trying to breastfeed and work. So I had multiple reasons to be immunosuppressed and insulin resistant. Now it's hard to know if you are insulin resistant, but a simple test that I'll tell you later can help. I had to do a glucose tolerance test, which requires you to drink this nasty, orange, sugary tasting soda. Then glucose is measured at timed intervals. It takes 3 hours to do that test, which is not so practical for people who have to work and who are caring for kids. That's how I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes. But way before you failed that test, the first step to insulin resistance is a fatty liver. The liver is not supposed to have fat. It can only hold 1 pound of fat before it gets messed up and unable to do its job, which is to help your body clear sugar. As a result, your pancreas is trying to compensate and secretes more insulin. This compounds the problem because insulin makes your liver accumulate more fat. Have you ever had foie gras, fatty duck or goose liver? Do you know how they make that? They force feed birds grains and fats. Half of Americans have foie gras, which literally translates to liver fat. I mentioned both sugar and proteins can raise your insulin. Sugars are one type of carbohydrate, and people use sugar and carbohydrates interchangeably. And that's another problem. They are not the same. They're not interchangeable. There are many different types of carbohydrates that interact with your liver differently, just like there are many different types of currencies that have different exchange rates. So if I told you I was going to give you some money, 1,000 bills, would that make a difference in your savings account? It would depend on the number that's on those bills and the currency. Am I going to give you dollars, pesos, yens, or euros? They are all different values. How about 1,000 Mexican pesos? Would you be rich? Not if you're in California. That would be about 59 US dollars. So the currency of carbohydrates is just as complex. They all have the potential to release different amounts of energy, which may or may not elevate your blood sugar. And they are all processed in the liver through different metabolic pathways. There are 3 basic groups of carbohydrates. Sugars, which gives immediate energy, kind of like stepping on your accelerator of your car, maybe a Tesla. And this is why when you drink soda, energy drinks, or sugary coffee or juice, you get a perk of energy before you crash. The problem is not all sugar is measurable on a blood test, which only looks for glucose. So many people falsely believe their sugar source is safe because it doesn't show up on their glucose meter. Now, each sugar affects the fat content in your liver differently, and I'll dive into this a little later. Starches are the most difficult to understand because this is what the food industry manipulates the most. Refined starches like white flour can give you immediate energy like a Tesla because your body easily breaks it down to simple sugars like glucose. But unrefined starches like eating oatmeal can give you slow and steady energy, kind of like driving a minivan. It gets more complex when industry manipulates starches with proteins together, like making pasta. There's a third group of starches called resistant starches that doesn't give you any energy and is more like dragging a trailer dead weight hitched behind your car to slow it down. This, however, protects your liver from getting fat. Now, fiber, the last carbohydrate, is very protective of your liver for several reasons. And instead of giving you energy, it actually makes your body use up stored energy. You can't digest fiber. Humans don't have the right enzymes. Like a trailer, it is dead weight and significantly slows down the energy you absorb from other foods. But your gut microbiome can digest fiber and ferment fiber into acetic acid in your colon. Acetic acid actually increases activity of an enzyme called Amp Kinase, which is how your body loses fat. The key to reducing and preventing fatty liver and building a strong immunity is to find foods that are high in natural fiber to make you burn fat. But it's not just having fiber in your food that is protective. It is also eating the food in its original fiber matrix. Have you ever ordered an item on Amazon that was protected with an oversized box with a ton of tape and bubble wrap? Kind of maybe overdoing on the packaging, huh? The fiber matrix is that Amazon packaging, and the item is like the starch that can raise your blood sugar. And if you put the box, the tape, the bubble cushion through a shredder, then you basically destroyed the packaging. You think the post office would accept that package to be shipped? No, because it's not protective. You've just destroyed the packaging. And your blender is a food packaging shredder. And you can go to the store or restaurants and buy processed foods with crumbling, shredded ingredients. And this is the essence why processed food, whether you do it at home or buy it from a shop, fails to protect your liver. But some packaging is better than no packaging, even if the packaging is broken. So processed foods with fiber is much better than eating processed foods without fiber. But the original, all-natural food is always best. Number 9 is another food that is high in fiber and has another nutrient that reduces the absorption of sugar, and that is protein. Now remember I mentioned that protein also spikes your insulin. Specifically, branched chain amino acids increase insulin levels. Like I said, nutrition is complex because your body is complex and chemistry is complex. And this is why the food industry can manipulate foods under our noses, and as a result, we are all getting sick. And if we turn a blind eye and just think our body will know what we need, we will just eat, we are all being naive and allowing the free market to drain our health. Would you let someone else manage your retirement account? Probably not. And I would argue that your health account is much more important than any bank account. The assets that grow your health are in the foods that you choose to eat or don't eat. Your body just can't whip it up in thin air. And when was the last time that you invested in a stock without doing any research? Probably didn't go so well. And this is why we all need to be nutritionists and biochemists. We all need to eat, so we all need to be experts in the field. And as a refresher, amino acids are the building blocks of proteins, which are important for muscle growth, connective tissue that holds your entire body together, the skin, your tendons, fascia, blood vessels, and proteins also make signaling molecules so that your body can communicate. That's really how your immune system communicates with the rest of your body. There are 3 branched chain amino acids: leucine, isoleucine, and valine. These are all essential amino acids. That means you need to get them in your diet. If you're a bodybuilder and actively trying to build muscle and drinking protein shakes, you're very familiar with leucine. But I'm a mere mortal, not actively trying to bulk up, so I don't want high levels of branched chain amino acids because they are toxic in excess. And that's why I try to get my protein within a fiber matrix. And one of the best sources of a high protein and high fiber food is the garbanzo bean. So number 9, I eat garbanzo beans daily. Beans have been shown to reduce insulin resistance by reducing blood sugar levels and are associated with a reduced risk of fatty liver. And remember, every time insulin is secreted, your liver stores more fat, which is very inflammatory to the liver. There is a silent epidemic of skinny, fat people. They're called TOFI, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. And certain ethnicities, like Asians, classically look healthy on the outside because they look skinny, but they have deadly fat inside. And millions of people have TOFI and they don't even know it. This is why India and China can have high rates of diabetes, but lower obesity rates in America. The more branched-chain amino acids you eat, the higher your insulin and cholesterol. So unless you're actively building muscle like bodybuilders, people like me just get fat with fatty livers if I drank protein shakes and ate a bunch of meat. And this is really because of one simple rule about protein. The body cannot store excess protein. Any excess protein that you don't use for the day is toxic and broken down to be stored as fat. And when you eat plants and starches, you're actually eating protein, even in potato chips and bread. Then if you're eating animal meats and seafood and animal products like dairy and cheeses and yogurts, you're eating more protein. Do you see how your protein quickly adds up? And you may be worried about eating enough protein. If you are eating enough to maintain your weight, you're eating enough protein. The average American eats twice as much protein than they need. So if you're having problems losing weight, you can either A, not eat, which is not sustainable, B, increase your exercise so that you can use the protein that you're eating, or C, limit your foods. I don't like the idea of limiting my foods. I don't count my calories. I don't measure my foods. And if you stick to all natural whole foods, you don't have to if you don't process it, because the foods come with that natural fiber matrix to protect you from overwhelming your liver. And these foods are things such as beans and legumes. So number 8, if you don't have time to cook beans, then how about 15 minutes to spare to cook some lentils, which has 26 grams of protein per cup. And by the way, all plants have all essential amino acids. They do vary in the amount of amino acids, and that's why it's good to eat a variety of plants. And remember that fiber matrix slowly releases those amino acids and sugars. There's also a bonus to fiber. Taped onto the natural fiber are also phytochemicals that can inhibit digestive enzymes. That further slows down your sugar absorption. Did I mention fiber also reduces the risk of dementia and colon cancer? That is not true for foods that lack fiber. Your brain is the most powerful organ, and every other organ will sacrifice itself to support your brain. But oftentimes, your brain can make your body do things that aren't so good for survival. Think about how many times you race down the highway above the speed limit. It's not your foot that made that decision to break the law. So to simply believe that your body will eat what you need is naive, because your brain is in control, and the choices in front of you are not naturally found in nature. They're designed by scientists called food chemists that have learned to manipulate your brain. 15,000 new products are released every year. It is one of you against trillions of industry dollars, and your brain is simply outnumbered. When obese and skinny people and our children are all getting fatty liver and diabetes, 2 diseases that have exploded since the 1980s. You know they've invented toxins worse than tobacco, and we're all drinking the Kool-Aid. At least for tobacco, you can see and smell the smoke and walk the other way. So when it comes to eating healthy, your desire to seek pleasurable foods often will lead you to foods filled with added sugar, because sugar is addictive. And until our government regulates these toxins, it's up to each of us to protect ourselves, our family, and our communities. And the first step is to be lifelong students of nutrition and health and understand why sugars behave differently. There are 3 basic sugar energy bombs that exist in nature. The Teslas of energy. Glucose, which is a preferred energy molecule in your body, and this is what your cells use as fuel. This is what will spike your insulin, which is a normal event that's supposed to happen. However, continuously high levels of glucose is not normal and is toxic. Glucose is sticky and can permanently stick to proteins and literally caramelize them. That's the crunchy crust of bread, the crunchy layer of your seared steak, and the crunchiness of a toasted marshmallow. This is called the Maillard Reaction and is literally responsible for AGE, advanced glycation end products, which will literally make you age fast. Having your own ribs and collective tissue turn brown from high blood sugars is not a good thing. Glycosylation is why we measure a protein called Hemoglobin A1c to tell how high your blood sugars are in the last 3 months, which translates to how much you have aged. The good news is that many of your proteins are constantly turning over, so if you reduce your glucose levels, you can reverse some of that aging. But remember, glucose is essential to life. There's nothing wrong with spiking your blood sugars transiently as long as it comes down to normal within a couple of hours. There's no survival advantage to get your hemoglobin A1c down to 0. In fact, that would be impossible. A normal hemoglobin A1c is below 5.7. The difference between a person with a normal metabolism versus a person with a fatty liver is the length of time glucose remains high and how much insulin is required to get that glucose down. Remember how I mentioned a simple lab test to tell if you are insulin resistant? That lab test is literally your insulin level, which is a more sensitive marker of fatty liver, as well as prediabetes, than just checking your blood sugar or measuring your hemoglobin A1c. And this is because insulin will rise before your glucose or hemoglobin A1c is abnormal. And hence you see how checking your glucose can have a false sense of security. Remember, glucose is essential. If you are on a low carbohydrate diet or no food diet, your liver will still make glucose whenever your body needs it. And if you don't eat starch, the first place it will get glucose from is your muscle cells because you have a lot of muscle. Your muscles will break down, sacrifice itself to donate protein for your brain to be alive. Protein is then broken down to glucose, a process called gluconeogenesis. So whether you are fasting, starving, or on a low carbohydrate diet, you will break down muscle to fulfill your glucose needs. This costs your body a lot of energy and muscle mass, so it's not optimal and your body does not prefer to use this as energy. And this is why if you don't get your diet right, you will lose your liver's best metabolic helper, your muscle. Fructose is much sweeter than glucose and you can use less of it. And when you eat fructose, your liver converts it into a fat called triglycerides. That's why when you eat more sugar, your cholesterol goes up. However, some of those triglycerides get stuck in your liver, hence fatty liver. And remember, fat in the liver causes more insulin resistance. Fructose makes foie gras faster. The fructose in fruit is different because it has such little fructose and it's packaged with that fiber matrix. Did you know that your small intestine microbiome can metabolize small amounts of fructose? And that's why consuming whole fruit is fine. That fructose in fruit is for your gut microbiome. This naturally protects your liver. However, if you drink fruit juice or eat a ton of high fructose corn syrup, which is hidden in your favorite foods like breads, other bakery items, snacks, cereals, yogurts, beverages, sauces, salad dressing, really the list is endless. See how quickly you can overwhelm your intestine's ability to help your liver? And unlike cyanide, which is also natural, fructose is a slow killer in more ways than just packing on liver fat. Fructose can also beat up your monocytes, critical immune cells that are the first line of defense against colds. And by the way, table sugar is 50% fructose. Now, if you think about it, your mouth is a petri dish to grow bacteria. Sugar grows bacteria and yeast, and that's how you get your baking yeast to be active. You give it some sugar. And that's why people who consume lots of sugar get more cavities, and kids who eat more sugar also get more rheumatic fever. So if you want your kids to get less colds and sore throats, you should consider not feeding their germs and suppressing their immune system with a diet high in added sugar, especially in pastries and drinks, whether they are store-bought or homemade. And this is really our public health crisis. Fatty liver is the most common liver disease in U.S. children. Our children should not be getting sick and dying from eating food. And if you have an obese child, that's not a sign of health or affluence. Your child has metabolic syndrome from the foods he or she is eating. I was that child. I grew up as a latchkey kid because both my parents had to work. My dad worked 3 jobs in a day to make ends meet. My mom, having survived periods of starvation in her childhood, made sure that our house was stocked up like Costco. Unfortunately, she stocked up with convenient, processed, prepackaged foods like TV dinners in the freezer, cereals and snacks and breakfast cereals. All that stuff made me fat, and it was a tax on my health. When I grew up, I got lots of colds and sore throats, eczema, and bad allergies. I ate lots of processed food as a kid. I was a designated coupon clipper, which is a great way to lure people to buy junk food. And I can tell you from personal experience, you cannot moderate processed foods. These foods are not only addictive, but they're a tax on your health. You know how hard it is to save money when all you do is pay the government taxes? Well, it's even worse when it comes to processed food. And when you eat processed foods, that tax is cumulative on your health. And it literally will reduce your health span. And you don't have to get old to get sick. As an adult looking back, my parents tried their best, and I'm so appreciative that my mom sacrificed her time to always cook fresh meals when she came home in the evenings and on the weekends, and stocked up our house with fresh fruit and vegetables too. By making small changes and adding quality and fresh foods, you can reverse fatty liver within days, even without losing weight. And this was done in children. Galactose is the next simple sugar energy molecule that you can find in your body. It tastes much less sweet, so it's really not used as a sugar additive. However, combined with glucose, it makes a new sugar called lactose, which is found in dairy. And yep, that's why people love their milk. In nature, you will find all three sugars, and by combining two of these molecules together, you can form other simple sugars like maltose and lactose. And notice all sugars end with ose, O-S-E. So when people make a general statement that all carbs are bad, they don't understand the science of human biology. It's like gravity. You can ignore it, but I guarantee if you jump off a building, gravity will make you fall. So it's best you learn where to step. Nutrition is complex, and we shouldn't pretend it's simple. Life would only be simple if we didn't have an abundance of food choices, and 80% of it is processed junk. Many people have asked me to give concrete brand names, but it's hard for me to do so because I actually don't live in your area, so I don't know what is in your area to eat. It's also because there's so many new products. 15,000 a year, and they always change old products. So my goal is to empower you with Evergreen Tools to help you best pick best foods to nourish you and your family. And these basic food principles will really never change. It's really important to read the nutrition label if you're going to buy processed foods. And that's why I try to stay away from processed foods. And number 7, I always look for naturally red color foods every day. That red color are phytonutrients called anthocyanins that are known to inhibit digestive enzymes that degrade starches. And you can find these wonderful nutrients in the red azuki bean, which has been shown in mice to reduce fat in their liver. Granted, we aren't mice, but beans in general have shown to improve insulin sensitivity, reduce glucose spikes, lower weight, and reduce fatty liver. Now, if you eat your beans with added sugar hidden in the center of a starchy white bun, well, it's going to be hard to see improvements in your fatty liver. They put sugar in that white bun and many breads. Have you ever tasted flour without added sugar? It doesn't taste so good, and it's not as fluffy. All added sugar in food has fructose. So if your food, sweet or savory, has added sugar, there's really about 50 names for sugar, then you can have confidence you're eating fructose, even though it doesn't explicitly say fructose on the label. Now, number 6 is a spice that increases Amp Kinase. And I mentioned prior that Amp Kinase is an enzyme that makes your body burn fat, and it shuts off storing fat. And kinase also stimulates more mitochondria production, which is a powerful organelle that your liver is losing. You can activate this enzyme by exercising, fasting, or eating the right foods. And this spice is called black cumin, Nagelia sativa. A quarter teaspoon a day can turn off appetite, burn fat, reduce inflammation, and also improve asthma, arthritis, and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Number 5 is a grain that has been shown to clinically reduce liver inflammation and obesity. Now, you may be opposed to eating grains in your diet. I'm just telling you that you're missing out on nutrients that are only found in grains. In one study, people who ate this grain, which is oatmeal, twice a day for 12 weeks with really less than a cup of oatmeal a day, decreased their liver enzymes, improved their body fat composition, and lower their cholesterol. Now, I don't eat oatmeal for the starch. I eat it for its fiber and phytonutrients, and that's why I go for Oat Groats. Number 4, if you aren't an oatmeal person, some people just aren't, you can really choose any other whole grain. Whole grains can help reduce fat in your liver as well as in your abdomen, as proven by the study of over 200 people. For 12 weeks, they just switch half of their refined grain to whole grain. People voluntarily even got liver biopsies to prove that whole grains reverse fatty liver. Number 3 is another natural plant full of fiber and anthocyanins that longevity cultures like Okinawans eat almost daily, and that's the purple sweet potato. Even the juice of the sweet potato, full of anthocyanins, has been shown to reduce liver inflammation. But imagine if you ate the whole purple sweet potato, how that fiber and resistant starch would benefit you, not to mention all the vitamins and other nutrients that are in a whole sweet potato. Number 2 is another spice that my parents always made me drink whenever I was sick. Just a teaspoon of this spice in a hot cup of water can suppress your appetite, elevate your metabolic rate, and reduce your liver fat. And this is ginger. My parents ate a lot of ginger and never had any problems with blood sugar. Now, number 1 is a condiment that you can add to any food. If you have blood sugar problems, you should add it to all your food. I vividly remember my parents telling me how healthy this condiment was, but I refused to eat it because it was so sour. And if you guessed that this condiment is vinegar, you would be correct. Vinegar is fermented from sugars into acetic acid, which, remember, increases your Amp Kinase to curb your appetite, reduce fat, reduce your total cholesterol, improve your blood sugar, and insulin resistance. All this increases your metabolism and reduces fat in the liver. 2 teaspoons with every meal is a target. Even vinegar consumed at night can lower your blood sugars in the morning. As an added bonus, it can help reduce bacteria in your food. Have you noticed how many recalls are in veggies these days? You should still wash your produce well, and you want to make sure not to drink vinegar straight, as that acid can erode your teeth and erode your food pipe. Now, I prefer to add basmati vinegar to my food because of those powerful anthocyanins, and it has a sweeter taste. If you want to learn about other powerful foods, check out the next video.